Just in case.
So, I don't know if any of you have heard this song. It was making the rounds of Vacation Bible School curriculum in like the aughts. Do we still call those the early aughts?
Could call them the naughties, I guess.
Okay. Goes like this. The Lord is my light and my salvation. The Lord is my light. Does anyone know that one? It was super popular.
Different tune.
Oh, you've heard it? Okay. Well, it was super popular with the kids. It had a great music video. But I think what they really liked was the verses, because it had rap verses. And it, like, back then, like, if you tell a 5 and a 10-year-old that we get to sing a rap song in church, that was just like heaven to them. More like this. I'm not afraid of the darkness falling. I can hear a voice softly calling, even in the middle of the darkest night, filling my world with a beautiful light. You can see, like, hordes of kids going home singing that in the car. Parents are like, please stop using that song, but it was a big hit. And I like to believe that these kids grew up, and you know, a lot of them, you know how Vacation Bible School works, right? You get a lot of your own kids, but a lot of friends get invited too. So for some kids, like, that's church. That's the way they come to know God as they're growing up. And I hope that they take that home and they know that wherever they are, whatever they're going through, they can trust that God will be there with them in the middle of it, and maybe they will feel less fearful as they're going through the struggles that they face. And clearly from today's readings, there's this great relationship between faith and fear. And it can bring us closer to God, but it can also drive us away, cause us to question our faith. Because, you know, in those most difficult moments in our lives, in the times when we really are struggling to find hope and a way forward, through confusion and pain and grief and suffering, that is when we most need God. And it's also when we are most tempted to question God's presence with us and to think, God, do you really care? I mean, how could you care? Because look at everything that is happening. And we might even rail at God or turn our backs on God in anger. Now, no judgment. No judgment at all. We have all of us been in this place in our lives. We're not the first, and we won't be the last. I mean, today we met Abram, right? And Abram, in this reading that we get, he is on the point of losing his faith in trust in God. Now, Abram's been on a long journey already. He started that journey with God when he was 75 years old. I don't know, we don't know how long it's been that he's been with God at this point since then. Wandering from place to place to place, right? We heard about just a few of them in this one, but it's a lot. But he's getting pretty old by this point, and he really sees, you know, the end of his life coming, and he still really longs for a child for him and Sarai. He's worried he'll never have that child, he'll never have an heir. His legacy will not continue, or he'll have to be handed over to someone from outside his family. And he's kind of yelling at God. And God says to him, you know what, don't be afraid. Don't be so worried, Abram, because I'm still here with you. Don't push me aside. In fact, he's like, just let me wrap you up and protect you in the middle of all of this. But Abram's not hearing it. He's like, God, really? You promised me this stuff. I mean, you promised me that I would have as many descendants as the stars. So where are you, God? What's going on here? And I mean, can you blame him? Can you blame Abram? Because God had asked a lot of him. And Abram and Sarai and their nephew Lot had left everything behind. And they have followed God through this long, huge odyssey from place to place. And it had not been an easy journey either. They had been through famine and wars and conflict within their own family. There had been plenty of threats along the way. And they had prospered too. But I don't know, at this moment, it's really hard for Abram to hear God just say, don't you worry, it's all going to be fine. So clearly Abram's trust and faith in God is at a low ebb here. And he's having a hard seeing all the good parts too. Because the thing about these moments is when you're in the middle of it, you don't see all the amazing blessings that have come from God. It's so much harder. I mean, Abram and Sarah, they have thrived through all of this. They have flocks and they have all that they need for the most part to have this great household. But Abram pushing God away in the middle of this is very understandable because, his grief is real. Infertility, it is painful, it is hard, it is awful. And he's just spinning. He's spinning in all of that anxiety about a future that he sees closing down for him. Who will care for them? Who will care for all that they've built? But you know what I think is great about this story is in the middle of that, he's still having this conversation with God, isn't he? That's who he's yelling at. He's still there saying, God, I want you to be my light. I want you to be my salvation. I want to be able to feel that I'm not afraid of the darkness because I can hear your voice still calling softly to me in the middle of my darkest nights. And, you just left with this feeling, Abram will figure it out. He'll get there. We know that because we read it in the Bible, right? We know the whole story. But still, even this moment, you can see he'll get there. It's going to happen. We're not worried about Abram, are we? But clearly, for all of us, there are those times and places when fear gets the upper hand on our faith from time to time. It's part of that journey. Because, we sort of expected that our faith journey could just be this easy one, right? Because if God's with us, then what could go wrong? I mean, we read that in the Bible. We want it to be like that. But we've also been given a script to follow. Follow Jesus, right? Follow Jesus' way. But what does that really mean? Because there's be a good person, be generous and be caring. That is part of following Jesus. There's no question about it. But, it's also about trusting in God in a way that we live and we love and we serve just like Jesus did. And that, living and loving and serving just like Jesus did, it will not make everything always okay all of the time. Because sometimes when you live and you love and you serve like Jesus, you bump up against the ways that humanity doesn't like that. It challenges the ways that we get self-serving, both in ourselves and in our human societies. And they push back. We push back. And, if I think about it, I think we all think about it, I think Jesus might have warned us about that. That if you're going to follow me, it's not always going to be evil, and some people will get upset. So what do we do? What do we do in the times when everything is falling apart and we're struggling to feel Jesus' protective wings around us as we try to keep living and loving and serving like Jesus did? And how do we keep that fear and that anxiety from overtaking our trust and our faith in God. Well, in that gospel reading today, it sounds like Jesus is a script to follow too, doesn't he? The one he's following today is the prophet script. Now, Old Testament prophets, right? All Isaiah, Jeremiah, all those good ones. That script over and over and again brings those prophets into conflict with the principalities and the powers of their time. Speak truth to power, that's the prophet script. Only power doesn't let it, do they? And they get mad at those prophets over and over and over again. So that's the script that Jesus is following. I mean, he is out there and he is healing people from what ails them. He is liberating them from the demons that possess them. And he is spreading God's redemptive love wherever he goes. And it seems like the power and principality that's upset by this is King Herod and his regime. Now, King Herod is a puppet king. He's been put in place by the Roman occupation. And he is not there to serve the benefit and good of the people, is he? He's there to serve the needs of the empire, to make sure that he can continue to extract wealth from Israel for the Roman Empire and, for himself while he's at it. And so he's going to use oppression and polarization and anxiety and fear as much as he can to maintain that situation. Jesus, with all this healing and liberating from the demons that possess people and the spread of God's redemptive love, well, that gets in the way of what Herod set out to do. So you can see why people are warning Jesus to keep his distance and stay on the down low. But I love Jesus' response to this warning. He's like, you know what? This is it. This is what I'm here to do, and I am not going to stop. See, Jesus knows it will get him in trouble with Herod. Probably not right away. He can continue to sort of heal and spread God's redemptive love around the edges and just not get too close. But eventually he's going to end up right there in Jerusalem. He's going to be in Herod's face, and he's still not going to stop doing what he's doing. And that's going to get him in trouble. But it is not going to stop Jesus from healing and liberating and spreading God's redemptive love. I like to fancy that I can hear Jesus chanting as he goes, "I'm not afraid of the darkness falling. I can hear the voice softly calling, even in the middle of the darkest night. The Lord is my light." So, how do we do this? How do we follow in Jesus' way and keep our own fear and our own anxiety from overtaking our fear and trust, that we too can follow in this path? Well, it's hard. It is hard, because if we look around us, we see all that awfulness and that suffering, and it bears down on us, and it's hard to just keep looking at it straight in the eye and keep pushing back. It's hard not to just turn inwards on ourselves and try to keep all that at bay. And it's especially hard to keep on doing what God sent us here to do and keep spreading God's redemptive love in a world so filled with injustice and violence and self-serving powers and principalities. And you know what? None of us is Jesus. Not any of us. I hope that's not disappointing news for any of you today. I find it a relief, because Jesus was fully human and fully divine, but we were just human, right? And we will make a mash of it some of the time. I mean, even our greatest models of faith, they've done the same. They've had their peaks and they've had their valleys. So I've been thinking a lot about C.S. Lewis lately, as I'm sure a lot of you have, because that's who we're spending Lent with, the Screwtape Letters. And this week I was sifting through his Wikipedia article, and I learned a couple of really great things about him in there. Now, did any of you know that C.S. Lewis was born and raised in Belfast, Ireland? Matthew knew. You're the only one. Yeah, there was only Sally knew at 8 o'clock. I had no idea. I mean, he seems so British. As an American, reading like the Chronicles of Narnia as a child, that was like the peak of Britishness to me in 5th grade. Was little Lucy in her wardrobe door. I mean, we didn't even know what a wardrobe was here. I learned that word from C.S. Lewis. But apparently he was born and raised in Belfast, Ireland, in an Anglican Church of Ireland. It's called Church of Ireland, but it's the Anglican faith there in Northern Ireland. His grandfather was a priest in the Church of Ireland, and his great-great-great-grandfather was a bishop. So, like, really rooted in that faith tradition. But he, creative, imagine, you can just see him. He loved Beatrix pottery. I like to think of him running around the garden looking for all the little hedgehogs to talk to. But he also had a tough time. His mother died of cancer when he was like 10 years old. And his father, kind of emotionally distant, Victorian, wasn't really taught to be... to embrace his son and his grief in that time. Just kind of like then sent him off to boarding school. He got bounced around from school to school. Really tough, really tough. By the time young Lois was around 15, he's really questioning, where's God? Where are you in all this? Because this does not feel right. And being a smart kid, he's like, I'm gonna think this through. I'm going to look for logic. So he finds all of his great Latin readings and his takeaway wonderful quote that he found from a Latin philosopher I didn't know, Lucretius, who said, had God designed the world, it would not be a world so frail and so faulty as we see. So his trust in God, it's really down there. In fact, people who knew him at that time said he could get pretty foul-mouthed about it. He was funny and acerbic, but completely flippant about God and that God might ever care about anyone or anything. Then he goes off to World War I, serves in the trenches, and at age 19, I don't know, I can't imagine having had 19-year-old boys. I just couldn't see that. It just seems like more awful than you can imagine. And he was wounded, and so were many of his friends. He lost many of his friends, and it just seems to get worse for him. But he does find his way back. He finds his way back to his Christian faith, as we know. And there's a lot going on there. He has a lot of friends. But there was one story that I had never heard before that really stuck out for me that I thought was really powerful. One of his mates that he trained with, Paddy Moore, also Northern Irish, he and this mate, before they were shipped off to France to serve, made a pact. They made a pact that if anything had happened to either of them in the war, the survivor would take care of both of their families. Now, as it happened, Paddy was the one that was killed in action in 1918, and Lewis kept his promise. He went off and he found Paddy's mother, who wasn't that old at the time, she was about 45, and his sister, and made them part of his family. And he cared for them through the remainder of their lives. Paddy's mother went on to have dementia. She needed lots and lots of care, and he was always there for her. She was always part of his household. He never let go of that promise. He had this sense of some of the ways that God was, in fact, calling him to be a purveyor and bearer of God's love in the world. So, from these little snippets of Lewis, I have two takeaways in relationship to the things we're thinking about today. You see, friendships, in the end, were what reconnected Lewis to God. It was how he found his faith again, through getting this family that was close and loving that he hadn't had a chance to experience since until way back into before he was 10. And he had other friends who really helped support him in his struggles. I know a lot about Tolkien was part of this, but he had a lot of good friends in Oxford that helped him with this. We need friends to help us through these times when our faith is at its ebb and we are struggling to be able to trust in God. But the other thing that I take away from Lewis's story that I think has bearing for us is that Lewis, as we know, made his struggles with his faith an open book. He didn't feel the need to be perfect in his faith. Rather, he shared all of the worst and hardest and most difficult times with everyone everywhere, including us today, this many years later. And through his writings, his struggles help us to understand our struggles, don't they? And I think that's how we do it. I mean, fear is going to get the upper hand on faith for all of us from time to time. And we know this, it's always right there at the edge, fear and anxiety. If we're reading the Screwtape letters, they'll say it's actually one of the tools of the enemy. But you can see how it works at us and chips away our foundational sense that God will be there with us no matter what, and that we don't have to be afraid. And that awfulness and that suffering is real, and it disheartens us, and it can turn us inward on ourselves. And not one of us is Jesus. We are human. We need each other in this journey. And we need to be able to share our fears and our anxieties and our doubts together so that we can find our way back to our faith and trust in God. I think only then will we be able to get back to following Jesus, to set aside all of that fear, and then, become the bearers of God's redemptive love in a world of injustice and violence and self-serving powers and principalities. Be that and all that we are called to be. Through it, we need to carry with us just a little bit of God's reassurance. I'm not afraid of the darkness falling. I can hear a voice softly calling, even in the middle of the darkest night. The Lord is my light and my salvation. The Lord is my light